Welcome to
Oh, sorry.
Welcome to Decades of... Ladies and gentlemen, this is why you don't do live TV. Welcome to Decades of Horror, the 1970s.
Jill, this is Sergeant Sacker. Listen to me. We've traced a call. It's coming from inside the house.
This is episode 144, recorded July 15th, 2021.
Gruesome Magazine.
Hello, once again, I am your host, Doc Rodden, and this podcast about horror films released between 1970 and 1979. Each episode, my co-host Jeff Mohr and I will take a... Oh, shit. We will tackle another classic or not so classic film from this wondrous, groovy, gory, and influential decade. With me on this train wreck is my co-host, Jeff Mohr. Jeff, sir, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Are you sure?
Could you be any stranger? So don't call me.
Wow.
I see what he did there.
I'm good. I'm really good. I'm good.
All right. Joining us also is Bill Mulligan, writer, director, special effects guru, and man who holds hairless pussy. Why? All around nice guy. How you doing, Bill Mulligan?
I'm not as well as you. You've been hitting the liquor cabinets.
liquor.
Doing fine. Glad to be here.
Also joining us tonight is the one and only Old Shrad Hans, comic book artist and host of Decades of Classic Era and full of laughing gas. How you doing, sir?
Sir, I am speechless.
Speechless.
And how this show has gone so far.
I like.
I'm way better than some in this group. That's what I'll say.
I was thinking
I think I know
sir.
I think I know what Doc was trying to say, and I'm kind of glad he couldn't quite get it out. That's
good, because I had no idea. Will you write it down on a piece of paper for me?
Yeah, slip it to us.
All right. Well, the topic for tonight is When a Stranger Calls from 1979, a very iconic horror film. Maybe not talked on as much as, The Exorcist or, Dawn of the Dead or Omen or some of the others, but it has had a great influence on horror films and has still to this day one of the greatest openings in a horror film. Scream would not be the movie it was today without this one. I'm just thinking out loud. But that is the film we're going to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to share the first time we watched it with you today, and then we're going to talk about the film. And then we're going to wrap things up, and that's what we do. So let's dive into it. What does the card say? Released on the 3rd of November, 1976. That's in New York City, New York. Directed by Fred Walton. Writer. Now you know that release date is absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
I screwed up.
Is.
The release date, it's just one of those days.
Woo, what a podcast.
October 26th, 1979. Ignore everything written there. No, it's directed by Fred Walton. The writer is Steve Feke, and Fred Walton. The cast includes, but is not limited to, Carol Kane, Charles Durning, Ron O'Neill, Colleen Dewhurst, Tony Beckley, and Rachel Roberts. Tagline is "Every babysitter's nightmare becomes real," and that is listening to this podcast. And the synopsis is a psychopathic killer terrorizes a babysitter, then returns 7 years later to menace her again. Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly what this movie is. Okay, so let's.
I think that release date, Doc, was When a Friend Calls.
Oh.
Not When a Stranger Calls. It was When a Stranger Calls comes later.
Somebody needs to call IMDb.
Somebody needs to call the joke department and tell them keep up their jokes.
Hey, I never claimed I was funny. I just
all right, let's dive into this. Jeff, this was your pick, so I'm going to pick on you first. When did you first see this film? And what did you think?
Well, I saw it at the theater.
Wow, nice.
And, I don't think I've seen it since. If I have seen it since, I know I haven't seen it for at least 35 years. Seems weird to say that. But anyway, I didn't remember how this went. I really didn't. I didn't remember all the extra part. I thought this was going to be a whole in the house thing. And that happens in about 20 minutes. And I tell you what, I am impressed as hell with this movie this time around. I was really appreciative of everything about it. The cinematography, the editing, the acting was phenomenal, I thought, especially from the 4 or 5 leads that they have. So yeah, I thought it was great. I was pleasantly surprised and have renewed appreciation for this movie.
I like that, sir. I like that quite a lot. All right, Bill Mulligan, you're up next. When did you first see When a Stranger Calls, and what was your first impression?
Believe it or not, it was this morning.
Wow, you never saw it this morning?
Yeah, it's just one of those, again, that slipped through the cracks. I didn't see in the theater, and I guess I always felt like I'd seen it, even though I knew I hadn't seen it, because the opening 20 minutes, the premise, which is pretty much given away in the trailer and referenced in Scream, and I'm almost certain that this was in one of those horror compilation tapes that were popular back in the day, that they showed a good section of this. I felt like I'd really seen the whole thing, and like Jeff, I really thought it was, how long can you stretch out this babysitter with the caller in the house routine? And of course they don't. It's the first 20 minutes of the film, and then they go off on a complete, different tangent. I was also very pleasantly surprised. I probably would have watched it if I'd realized Charles Durning was in it, because I love Charles Durning. And here he's basically playing the Donald Pleasance role from Halloween.
Oh my God, you're right.
I didn't
think of it that way. Yeah.
And he's a little less strange than Donald Pleasance, but who isn't? I do. It's an odd. It's kind of an odd structure for the film. That first 20 minutes we have Carol Kane, young Carol Kane, wonderful actress, and then we go off. We think, okay, 7 years later we're going to be following her, and no, it's totally with Charles Durning, this detective, and we're following him, and then almost just as we've forgotten that Carol was even in the movie, there she is again. So I thought that's a pretty clever structure, a pretty clever way of doing the whole 3-act thing. I mean, I could have some complaints about it. I wish, as great as Charles Durning is, the character isn't given. I wish it'd been the same guy from Sisters, because that guy was a lot of fun. Every moment was fun to be around. I wish they'd given a little bit more backstory to the character. Why did he go from being a cop to being a detective? He really kind of had this almost Captain Ahab, like getting this guy was going to redeem him, but I don't know, redeem him from what. I feel like there was the potential for a backstory there that we never got. But overall, this is a fun little slice of 70s cinema. The director never did anything that really registered on my radar, but I thought he did a great job when you consider how that opening 20 minutes takes place in a very small area. He manages to make that telephone scary. Dang, that telephone was scary. I've almost forgotten how annoying and horrifying those things were. Every time it went off, it was like a thunderclap, the loudest thing in the movie. And you can't go back to those days now where you're just waiting for the call and you don't have caller ID, and if you're dialing anyone, you've got to do the rotary thing, and there's that long cord you could be strangled with. I mean, they really, I thought they did a really good job with this. It's a simple premise, but it's a good one, and even though the punchline for that first 20 minutes, it's still pretty effective. So I was very happy. I'm glad that Jeff picked this. I'm glad I finally got a chance to fill that gap in my horror movie knowledge.
Excellent. I'm shocked, sir. I'm shocked.
I guess. Yeah.
Really am.
Yeah. I could have lied. I could have lied.
You could have, but you're an honest guy, so that's why you like him so much. All right, Chad Hunt. Otherwise, Chad, when did you first see this film, and what was your first impression?
I first saw this on TV at some point back when it was on network TV, or they showed it on network TV. And I was a younger kid. I was, maybe 10 years old or something when this came out, 11. And so one of my aunts was over, and she was going to watch it that night, but she wasn't going to allow us to watch it. So you kids are off to bed. I'm going to watch this movie and I don't want to hear anything out of you. So I did what I normally do, hide behind the couch and watch the movie. And so I'm sitting there like this behind the couch, and the part comes on where the cop goes, he's in the house. And by this time I was so beside myself with fear, I jumped up and started going, he's in the house, as I ran up the stairs. And so that was my first impression of
Oh my God,
what a stranger calls.
That is the greatest story ever.
The jig was up.
Yeah. And I didn't care either. I thought there was some dude in the house.
Did you ever see the rest of the film? Not that night.
Eventually later, but not that night. I got in trouble. I was in trouble that night.
I bet.
But yeah, it's just the first 20 minutes of this movie is just iconic and I think one of the scariest things ever. And it was pretty gruesome, even though they didn't show blood. You had two kids upstairs that this guy ripped apart with his bare hands and that kind of thing. That's pretty gruesome stuff for not having any blood in it. And it's left its mark. I mean, you look at Carol Kane, you may think Taxi, you may think Princess Bride and some of those roles she was, but this is
Scourge.
Whenever I see her or see a picture of her or see her on TV, that's the go-to that I think of.
Absolutely.
So, so I still like it. I still do.
All right. I know I saw this back in the day. I thought I saw it like on HBO or pay television, but I may have watched it that night when it was on network television as well. But that was the only time I've ever seen a movie until this week. But it certainly left an impression. Much like Jeff, I only remembered the first 20 minutes. And I think that's because, the first 20 minutes we were hammered after, one after another. And I remember even seeing a good portion of that scene, especially the scene, the dialogue that we did at the beginning of the movie on Siskel and Ebert. I used to watch Siskel and Ebert all the time, and they played that scene, and I was like, but I swear to you, I did, I knew that Charles Durning was obviously because his face, but and I knew that the guy was in it, but I totally forgot all the stuff about him escaping and coming back, and that Carol Kane was even in the movie in the finale. I totally forgot. But I too, Jeff, was impressed on how well this film holds up. It is extraordinarily well made in its simplicity, right? Because it is very straightforward made, but it's not television, cookie cutter type, because a lot of times that description will kind of feel like it was, somebody came out television. Now this guy did do a lot of TV, but this really is it's a far more important film than I've ever given it credit for. And I was incredibly impressed watching this again. And much like you, Jeff, it has reignited my appreciation for the film and its place in horror history. It is a film I think most horror fans should revisit and reconsider. The director, though, I will say, Bill Mulligan, the director did direct one of my favorite 80s horror films, which is April Fool's Day.
Yes.
I do love that stupid film. And then he went on to do a whole bunch of TV shows.
And a sequel to this film, which I haven't seen, but apparently is a direct sequel to this.
Mm-hmm. When a Stranger Calls Back.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because this director actually, he has a really kind of a strange list of credits, but he directed Charles Durning in like 3 or 4 films. And also the cast in this is, we've got Charles Durning, and we just talked about him. This is the 3rd time we talked about him this year. We did Sisters and Dark
Night of the Scarecrow.
And then Dark Night of the Scarecrow. so he was nominated for 2, maybe 3 Oscars. I don't think he won, but Carol Kane was nominated for an Oscar. Colleen Dewhurst won several primetime Emmys. So yeah,
this is a top-notch cast. You can't complain about the cast.
And you know, I shouldn't talk about all of them ahead of time here, but yeah, it was really. I thought those 5 people and Ron O'Neill. I thought those 5 people
Ron O'Neill
did a great job. Did a great
job.
And
I think Tony Beckley. We have to talk about had he lived. I mean, this guy has really star quality.
He was disturbing as hell. All you had to do, he didn't even have to say anything. You just looked at him. We could talk about what state he was in, maybe later, maybe now. I don't know, but I think that added to it a little bit. You know, sorry to say, maybe that was all acting, but that boy, what a creepazoid!
It definitely. Oh yeah, you definitely the whole bar scene.
Oh, that was so uncomfortable.
Yes, and then when he follows her home, and then you know, but man, was she cool as ice, man? She handled that so perfectly.
That was good. Except the one thing that stood out first, I almost felt bad for this guy, even knowing that he's a child killer, and how he just was so thoroughly blown off by Colleen Dewhurst. I mean, she just could not give a rat's ass, and all that happens, and it's just kind of disturbing. And then, you know, she turns around about to go into her apartment, and there he is. And yes, she was cool as a cucumber, too cool. I mean, that would have been grounds right there to start screaming and reach for the bottle of mace you have in your purse. But I guess she was a little tipsy and everything. I mean, that whole thing was just so weird.
Well, I felt like she knew how to take a situation and without igniting it, you know, because a wrong move and she'd have tripped the trap, right?
Yeah. But she was used to dealing with guys like that. It sounded like she sat in that bar and had a couple of drinks.
And I guess after watching him get so thoroughly beaten up, he didn't seem quite so threatening. I think that's what's great. Well, I think that's an interesting thing is that, you know, this guy, we know he's a murderer, a maniac, and yet he in the bar he seems just awkward and passive. And you know, this really was. I don't know if it was because the actor was ill, because there's something in the trivia that he doesn't really. The description of the killer isn't really here, but the director wanted to work with him. But I think it's an interesting choice. Sure, he could have been like the Halloween killer. He could have been some hulking brute, you know, some Luca Brasi type. But this guy, he doesn't need to do that. He's terrifying because he's just so crazy and unpredictable. But the actor himself, boy.
Yeah, he was terminally ill during the production. He died in 1980.
What was he terminally ill of?
Well, if this was the right guy I read, but go ahead.
According to Wikipedia, the official cause was brain cancer, but it's possible that he had AIDS. This was early in the epidemic, before it was really well diagnosed or anything. So people who knew him say that's a possibility, but hard to say. But definitely he was ill, still able to convey that menace that
well, and it was effective because, you know, he did escape from an insane asylum, and you were talking about like 38 times he was given shock treatment over 6 years. So it was, you know, he definitely felt like he had been ravaged, but it felt like he was ravaged in that process in the film. So it did work. It did work for the character because
the scene where he stands in front of the mirror and is doing the flashbacks. That top picture there is one of the brief bits of blood that we get in this, where the flashback to the murders and everything, and he's breaking down. I mean, you get the sense that his mind has been fragmented, and that you know, this is something he can't really control. So even though, I mean, what could be worse than a child murder? I mean, it's a bold move on the movie's part to even open with that, but he manages to convey. I don't want to say you feel any sympathy for him, but you do feel some degree of empathy for the fact that this is a tortured mind here, real tortured soul.
And I wonder the interaction with Kathleen Dewhurst and Charles Durning's character. You were saying it was a little weird. It was where she would have these long periods of quiet where she wasn't saying anything, like she didn't know if she should. Like you were saying, maybe she felt some kind of sympathy for this guy because of the state he's in. I'm glad you guys brought it up because I thought that's what I got from it.
That or a distrust of authority, right? Because it could be that,
right.
Especially back in 78 and 79, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, and she didn't have a peephole, and he said he was a cop, but then he didn't have a badge, and
right.
I mean, she may have some issues herself. She seems like a fairly classy dame, but she's drinking at a dive bar, walking home in those stiletto heels. I don't know how women do that. That impressed the hell out of me. She's a little tipsy, and she's constantly, her lips are moving, but she's not saying anything. So she's like having some kind of internal monologue with herself. You feel like there's a lot of anger or something going on in her life. I think one of the disappointments I have in the movie is she's just dropped. When Durning's plan to capture her doesn't go through, that's the end of the character.
Yeah, that's it.
I guess they had played out what they were going to do with her, and I'm glad they didn't just fridge her or something. But it's kind of, I feel there wasn't really a closure there. I would have liked to have seen.
Yeah, you started to feel for her character. You started to get involved, and then it just dropped.
Now, I don't know what they could have done with her. It would have been stupid if she starts dating Charles Durning. But I don't know. I just wish there had been some way to resolve that as well. Because she's a great actress, boy. Yeah, not in very many movies, not in enough movies.
Yeah, I agree. She was really good in this, I thought.
Yeah, I was trying to remember where, because she looked familiar, and trying to remember where I saw her. I guess we could.
Well, she was in the Avonlea, the Anne of Green Gables series. I don't know if you ever watched those on public television.
I think I always felt like she was more of a theater actress than maybe a TV. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
I think, she was.
I mean, she did do 92 things. She has quite the credits, but
not too many genre things. So
no,
kind of surprising to see her in this, but. No, I don't know. Maybe she was friends with some of the filmmakers or the actors. Who knows?
Oh, she was in the Cowboys, John Wayne movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she was John Wayne's wife, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at the thing, and I mean, I definitely recognize her face and I recognize the name, but for the life of me, it's just one of those actors that got into my head, but I don't know where. So, but she was really good in this.
Dead Zone.
Well, Dead Zone.
Yes.
Mother.
She was. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's she was great in that. That's right.
A lot of TV work. Twilight Zone, the 1980s one, she was in there. Yeah, but not much sci-fi or horror.
Yeah, I don't remember her for that. That's for
but
sure.
A lot of TV.
But let's talk Carol Kane.
Oh man,
I am so happy. You don't know how happy I am, Bill, that you included Scrooge down below, because that's
the one I always think of her in that. I mean, and I had to find the right picture too, and just that look of malevolent gleefulness there, that sadistic cheer. She was great in that, but she was good in everything. I loved her in Taxi. And she was really good in this. Her look, that delicate look that she has, she really, I believe she was a teenager. And then when they showed her 7 years later, it really looked like she had
well, she was
grown up a little bit.
She was almost 30 when she filmed this.
Amazing. I mean,
and the other thing that's kind of interesting is in the first part when she's the babysitter and she's mostly just worried about herself, right? I mean, she's for the most part more controlled, but when it's her kids, she totally freaks out. Yeah, which I thought was interesting.
Which it sort of bookends the story,
Right. And you certainly feel sympathy for her. I mean, you know, I don't always care about the teenager who gets killed by the slasher in a lot of these movies. It's like, frankly, let's get on with the killing here. Come on, I got things to do. But her, no, you definitely, you know, and she played it cool. They were very clever, I thought, watching it. It's like, how do you explain the fact that for 20 minutes she doesn't just go check the damn kids, but they explain, the parents explain, hey, they had a cold, and
Yes.
you know, so there's no reason to believe that there's anything going on.
Well, and they also explain why she keeps answering the phone, because she's hoping this guy is going to call her.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
you could just not answer the phone, right? But,
Right.
Hey, Doc, you watch Gotham, right?
Gotham?
Oh yeah.
Gertrude Kappelput?
She was the mom.
Yeah.
She was
Penguin's mom.
Penguin's mom. Yeah. But she was in Taxi.
Simca.
Yeah.
She was Simca in Taxi.
Oh yeah, she was great. She was married to Andy Kaufman.
Watkins.
They were great.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. You know, she was in Annie Hall with Colleen Dewhurst, so they were both in Annie Hall. But Dog Day Afternoon, one of my favorite movies.
Oh yeah,
But I do not remember who she is in Dog Day Afternoon. She's Jenny. Is that the?
I think she's like the wife of either Al Pacino or I think
it's Al Pacino. Yeah. So
yeah.
So she has like one or two scenes.
She has an ability to portray a real vulnerability. You know, she just looks like a delicate little bird, but there's a strength by it. She won I don't know if she won or was nominated for Hester Street. I mean, she's capable of really knocking it out of the park, acting wise, and just seems like a really delightful person too. If you listen to the Gilbert Gottfried podcast, she was a recent guest, and she's a trip. She's very, very funny, and it was a fun interview.
Yeah, but Scrooge is a guilty pleasure.
Big time.
Absolutely. I don't know if it's a good movie or not. I can't tell you, but I just know that I love it. And oh man, all right.
I actually remember her from The World's Greatest Lover.
Oh yes,
a couple years before with
Gene Wilder.
Gene Wilder, Dom DeLuise during that period. But
oh my god, that movie! Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, she was in Princess Bride. So,
right.
The Muppet movie.
The Muppet movie. All right, Charles Durning. We got to talk about Charles Durning.
The man, the legend.
The hair, the Shatner body.
That's right.
The belly.
Give me the days when you could be a leading man and look like Charles.
And look like Charles Durning.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Well, they do one of these things that a lot of times really annoy me in films, and that's where they do the still shot and hold it for a long time, and it just it feels so weird, but it works for some stupid reason in this movie when the door opens up and it
Charles Durning. Oh wait. That's not so
well, and that I watched the short this afternoon, the original.
Oh, you did?
Short.
Oh, I was wondering if that was.
And it's on YouTube, I think. He's not in it. All the actors are different, but it's almost beat for beat the same. There's a couple of differences, like I don't think they explained that the kids were sick, and that's why she didn't go upstairs. So I think that was a nice touch added. But they have that same freeze frame on the cop at the door, and then after a few seconds, it dissolves into. Oh, it's actually a little while later. He's showing up after they already know what happened, and the detective to investigate rather than the patrolman. So it's very, very close to the same thing, just different actors. The music. One of the things on this one I was really impressed with was the music,
or the lack of music.
Well, everything about the movie really. I mean, I was like, I was tight. I was tense, I guess, through almost this whole thing. I mean, there's so many scenes like that where everything is just like, first you got the 20 minutes of the phone call. Then at some point you've got, he escapes. And then from that point on, you have, they're looking for him. Then you see him in the bar. And from that point on, almost every scene has some tension in it. Is somebody following her home? Is somebody, so everything has some tension.
Ding.
There's another film that this kind of reminded me of, the original version of Black Christmas, which in the early goings is pretty much they're being terrorized by this guy on the phone, and then it veers off into, it's a pretty amazing film, veers off into some slasher territory. But the initial thing with that phone, again, it really just struck me how jarring the Ring was, and I've forgotten just how horrifying the phones used to be. Now they play catchy little tunes and everything else. But,
I thought I read somewhere that the volume of the phone ring went up.
Oh, definitely it went
each
up.
time.
Each time they rang, yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
wow, that's what a great touch. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was also in Dog Day Afternoon.
Oh,
I don't
Charles.
know.
Wow.
What's the connection? There's a connection with all these actors. They must be on like the same, the same agent or something. It might be how they all got.
I mean, it's so. I'm glad they had someone like this. He's got the right attitude and everything, and it's also realistic. I felt bad when he's chasing this guy, and he's trying to. They're doing some pretty heavy running here, and it's like, okay,
but he goes.
The one guy's been eating healthy hospital food for the last 7 years, and Charles Durning has not ever turned down an offer to go to the all-you-can-eat buffet. We know how this race is going to end, but
yeah, it's just having him.
Well, I really dug the whole lockpick idea too.
Yeah,
or I think he called them key picks, but that was. He had his own little key pick kit. He stuff down it.
He was pretty good at throwing them too.
Oh, Lordy.
Well, not that great, but he missed.
Yeah, he missed, but it was pretty impressive.
Well, that was his idea. He goes, "I'm gonna." Okay. But he was in North Dallas 40, which there's another strange little 79 film. Not a genre film, but one of the few Mac Davis films out there.
Yeah, it is.
You could always count on Charles Durning to deliver the goods.
He did.
Well, we already mentioned this on the 80s, but not here. His nominations were to be or not to be the Mel Brooks movie and the Best Little Whorehouse in Texas for best supporting.
Yeah,
the governor.
Yeah, he had a good comedic touch. He didn't get to use it at all in this one, but
I loved him in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That just cracked me up.
I feel like we don't have that many actors like that anymore.
Yeah.
So that was the poster. Oops, sorry.
Which one?
The black and white one. That was the one I was familiar with. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Back in the day when you could have a black and white poster, and
well, if any film could do it, this one did, because man, that shot, just that square, that little tiny it's a rectangle, but
the eyes and the phone.
Yeah, that's all you need. And there's that phone. Yeah. How many kids today don't know what a rotary phone is?
They'd be stabbing the numbers with their fingers trying to make something happen.
Oh man, that damn thing.
How did you survive when you had to wait for the 9 to go all the way back down? It's like, it gave us time to think about whether we really wanted to make this call or not.
Pushed it back.
You had
until your finger was red.
There was a rhythm to it,
Yeah.
Oh my god! I liked how the phones changed. From the
Now just tell your phone to call somebody. It can't.
I know.
Right. Now your phone calls you.
Yeah.
If I do it, it'll call somebody, so I better not do it.
But it was also that was the golden age of creepy callers, because you couldn't there was no screen there to tell you who's calling or keep a record.
Yeah.
You had to get the cops and keep them on the line for a minute or two to
trace it.
Actually trace it. So that was the best time to be that kind of. Now boys and girls, you can't get away with that nonsense, so just don't do it.
What, like if you go back in time, you can? Yeah. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
If you want to do this, you got to go back to 1970. Come on. The dialogue is pretty chilling in that first 20 minutes when he says he wants to bathe in her blood or put the blood all over.
Yes.
Like, oh,
I want your blood. What do you want? Your blood.
All over me. Like, oh
your
my god.
Blood.
And it's also pretty.
especially when you realize later on that he was already covered in the
kids'
blood of
blood.
the kids.
Oh my gosh! And when they carry the kids out in the black bags.
And the bags is like, thank God they at least did not actually show us the kids before they got murdered. It's tough enough just conceptually child being murdered, but if they'd like shown us like them reading comic books or playing with their Barbie doll, I would have lost it. It's kind of an American thing, infamous. You know, don't show children being killed in your film. It's like John Carpenter always said that's what caused Assault on Precinct 13 to fail. He shows a kid being blown away. She's eating an ice cream cone in the first 10 minutes of the movie. It's like, you lose the audience.
That caused you to want to see it.
Yeah, for people
special
of
people.
Type. Well, I thought it was interesting too. Is we didn't have to actually. I mean, we see all the blood on him. We hear them say, you know, what did he use? Nothing. With his bare hands. And then you hear him say, yeah, the mortician said if in order to reconstruct him for an open casket would have took 6 days. I'm like, that probably had as much impact as anything in terms of.
Right.
That's one of the rare times where tell don't show actually works.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There are times in horror when things like that where I mean, nowadays, of course, you almost have to show. But when you show it, of course, it's just a special effect. When the way they were describing it, your mind is going places like, what does that mean? How could it possibly be that bad? And then you start thinking how it could be that bad. Yeah, way more effective.
I never saw the remake.
I didn't either.
I didn't either. Yeah. If I was going to watch it, I would have watched this one.
Yeah, and I don't recall ever seeing the television sequel.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that. I kind of want to see it now because apparently it has some of the same cast.
It does, with the exception of Tony Beckley.
Wow.
I wanted to say something about Ron O'Neal because.
Please.
Well, I was doing a little reading about him, and he kind of got. I guess that would be a pun. He kind of got the shaft because he played Superfly, and that got hammered from both sides. You know, it was promoting drugs, or it was a bad role model, or
he was
whatever
a pimp,
it was.
Right? Superfly was like
he was a cocaine dealer. Yeah,
he was a superhero cocaine dealer.
Yes. So
different time.
And this guy was apparently he was like classically trained and was a really good actor and just could not get, decent parts. He's played Othello multiple times, but he was kind of a little bitter about that. Not so much the part, but the basically the racism, the industry, and the public. The way that all reacts to that stuff.
Which is a shame because he didn't get paid a lot to do Superfly.
I'm sure not.
If you're going to have a movie role define you for life, at least try to, get, if you're like, oh no, you're always going to be Captain America. It's like, oh, well, at least I got paid millions of dollars to do it. This poor guy did Superfly and that's all they ever wanted him to do. And he didn't even get a decent paycheck out of it.
He did do 2 of them.
Superfly, TNT. Yeah.
So that's one of those. That's too bad. I wish I kind of want to keep an eye out for some of those movies where maybe he had a bigger part to see what he can really do. Because just in the little part he has here, first he's a patrolman the first time around, and then the 7 years later, after Charles Durning is now a retired detective turned PI, he's now moved up and is a detective. And they have actually an interesting conversation. And Charles Durning comes right out and says, "I'm
going to kill him.
I'm taking him out. I'm going to kill him."
I'm surprised at the amount of people in this movie who are willing to just be accomplices to murder.
That's funny.
You know what?
I'm going to kill him.
Listen,
well, don't do that.
I'm not a violent man, and neither are most of my friends. But man, something about child murderers just brings out the inner Charles Bronson in you.
Or Charles Durning.
Or Charles Durning. You just if there's anything where you say like the world would be in a better place without this person, that would be one of them. Because you kill a child, it's like killing the future, and just like I mean, all murder's bad, yada yada yada. But if I were on a jury and someone had killed a child murderer in a fit of rage, I'd be like, well, don't you ever do that again, and off you go, sir.
And off you go.
Yeah.
So I was looking up
that particular guy again. Okay.
I was looking up too the the psychiatrist, the doctor that they go back to talk to, Rachel Roberts. She was also nominated for an Oscar. I mean, it's interesting that they got all these people together in this film.
Yeah.
The cinematographer was nominated for an Oscar.
Oh yeah, he did a number. He did Addams Family Values. He did a number of good films.
So
the janitor cleaned the toilets on both this movie and Jurassic Park.
Wow.
So.
See, a rising tide lifts all boats. You get a couple of good actors.
They call that maintenance supervisor.
I do wonder about that, though. Is it? I mean, because we see this where suddenly you'll have a film and it's by a director who, is not an A-list director, and it's sort of a genre film, and yet it has a really good cast, not just one or two, but a whole bunch of really good people. And is it like that? They're like looking at scripts and it's like, this looks like a piece of trash. Oh, Charlie's in it? It can't be too bad, or maybe they all have the same agent. Somehow it just seems like
it was a lot smaller back. Hollywood was smaller then, so it's sort of like when we go over movies in the classic era and we see the same people over and over again in different roles. It was either all happening under the same production company, or like you said, everybody had the same managers and agents and stuff like that. So. But we see that a lot if you pay attention.
Well, and when you go back to the 30s and 40s, and even the 50s, you had contract players.
Right.
So anytime it's the same company, you got a lot of the same people showing up, not only in the cast but also in the crew.
Yeah, even up into the 60s. Look at the Hammer films. Hammer films was yeah. So
go ahead. I was going to say a lot of times you'll have like horror films where people who have maybe seen better days and they're just taking a paycheck or something. But the folks in this one still had some good years ahead of them. I mean, some of their award-winning performances were actually yet to be done. So, yeah, I'll just give it full credit. Whoever cast this, whoever got that cast together, really knocked it out of the park.
Well, it's also, it was probably sold to the actors as a crime thriller because it's not a typical horror film.
Yeah.
Right.
Think, but I remember this being high profile when it came out, and a lot of people talking about it. And the trailers, I remember seeing trailers, and like I said earlier, Siskel and Ebert were reviewing it and watching that regular. So,
well, the whole in the house, he's in the house thing was
huge,
an urban legend. That was something everybody knew about. So everybody pretty much knew what the first 20 minutes was. The trick was that they were able to create suspense, even though you knew where it was going, and then
that was part of the suspense, I think, right?
Yeah.
Now the phone number she gives away, that's her phone number, was used again in the Amityville Horror in 1979, and then something called Forever Young in 1992. It's kind of funny, because they used the 555.
555, yeah. Right, which is they always use. So guys, if a girl ever gives you her phone number and it starts with 555, she was not interested. Just a tip.
The guy that plays the kid's father.
Your mom still loves you, though.
Yeah.
The guy that plays the kid's father, Carmen Argenziano, is a workhorse character actor. He's got over 200 credits.
Wow.
And I don't recall what I recognize him from, but I do. Oh, that guy! So I'd look him up, and I'd have to go back through all the films, but he's one of those guys I think that was in a lot of cop shows,
Okay.
You guys got nothing now.
I got nothing. I don't know. All right. Why don't we go ahead and wrap this one up? Do we have feedback tonight to go into?
We do.
All right. So let's just give our final thoughts on this film. And now that we've seen it after all these years, and now we're reevaluating it, where does it sit? Where does it sit in horror? So Jeff, sir, you are up first.
Well, I was looking for, I picked this because of what we have just been saying. I remember seeing it. I remember liking it. I haven't seen it since then. I couldn't remember that much about it. I thought it would be fun to check it out again. So I don't know where it fits, but I do remember thinking, I was looking for images on this, and I'm like, it was tough to find anything other than Carol Kane on the phone. I mean, 80% of the images are Carol Kane on the phone, and I'm like going, oh my God, this might be a turkey, and I forgot, it doesn't hold up, and holy cow, it does. It's really good, and it's at a time when gore was becoming more prevalent, but this one doesn't go there. Although what happens in the film is very gruesome. So check it out. It's out there.
It's out there. It is definitely out there. Bill, sir, what is your? Where'd you go? Come on over here. What is your? Where does this movie fit in the horror echelon?
I think it has kind of a special place. It feels like a kind of a precursor to the Scream movies and the urban legend movies. It takes a very thin premise. I mean, you can't get much thinner than an urban legend, and expands on it with some good characters played by some excellent actors. So a fun movie. Could it have been a little bloodier? Yeah, it could have been, I guess. I don't know. What was it rated? It doesn't feel to me like it should be.
I think it was PG.
Yeah, PG.
No, it was rated R.
How? Well, I think it's just the premise. Just
ripping children apart. Yeah.
Yes, if you just say, "Oh, by the way, some kids got ripped apart," instantly an R rating.
They didn't want your babysitter seeing this movie.
Yeah.
No, because I'll ruin the ending.
Yeah. So a good film to watch. A real fun movie. Really liked it.
All right, Chad. Now that you've seen it after running up the steps all those years ago, what do you think? Should you have stayed downstairs back in 1979?
No. At the time, no. But it's still watching it this time. I've seen it numerous times since it first came out, and it is a great cast. There's some great acting in there. There's some great moments between characters in there. Charles Durning and the lady who he used as bait,
Colleen Dewhurst.
I love that back and forth between them. I thought it was great, and the scary parts are scary, and this isn't Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees serial killer type stuff, but still just as gruesome because he's not supernatural or anything like that. I mean, like we were talking about before, he tore these kids apart with his bare hands. That's scary. That's scary stuff. And it's still the front end or the back end of this movie is just as scary as the front end, I think. But in different ways, where she just lost her mind at the end there, and worry about her kids. But yeah, it's still a great movie, still a fun movie to watch, and and iconic. I'll say too. It's an iconic movie. So see it if you haven't.
When was a sugar daddy on a stick ever as frightening as in this movie?
When it sticks to your shirt and your mom does your laundry,
and she doesn't know where you got it from.
Yeah, I can see the fear.
So I committed the worst thing a horror fan can, and I wrote this film off years ago, right? I remember seeing it, but then I never held it in high regard. I remember the first 20 minutes and appreciate that, but the film itself, I kind of said, it's a thing, it happens. And after seeing it this week, I'm like, wow, I really disrespected this film all these years. This film it holds up remarkably well. The acting is incredible. And even though I question, like, why did they cast Carol Kane here? I mean, she's great in it, but she's obviously, that 20-something year old teenager, and it's so annoying. But it makes sense in this film because she does have to age, and and in that once that happened, and which I'd forgotten, it actually gained respect for what they did because you do remember her in this role, and you do remember that line, even though you, or at least I do, misquote it. You still get the gist of it. It's so iconic and it's so influential, and the rest of the film is as strong as that, and just really holds this film together. And it is really, now it's more a crime drama than it is a horror film, but it does have those tense moments that it is definitely a horror film in the end. And my opinion of this film from the day before I rewatched it and now after rewatching it the day after has changed so much. And I think you should see this film. Revisit it.
Agreed.
Give it a chance.
So there.
Don't be Doc.
Okay.
All right. That's
Bill.
our review of When a Stranger Calls from 1979. Jeff Mohr, sir, you have some feedback for us.
Yes, we do. And this is on episode 142, Blood-Sucking Freaks. This one's from Don Joe. I first rented this film in the late 80s when I was about 14 or so. Oh, my God.
Wow.
And
Wow.
having no knowledge of what I was in for. I'm sorry, Don. Expected just another crazy horror film. This changed me, not knowing those things could be in one's imagination, let alone film. I think the tagline was about stretching the imagination, was it? It's not a great film, but it's well made and excels at its purpose. A film that changes your view on life and film is successful, not simply because it was shocking, but that it was effectively done. I've seen many torture genre films and they never work for me. Gore, shock, just because is not good. But this one was well made and had great acting, which made it much more disturbing. My first email, which I still have, has a variant of Ralphus in the address, thanks to this movie. I've since seen it several times, and just as you guys mentioned, I would show it to friends who'd say, "What's the strangest things you've got?" They were always shocked. Even now in 2021, it's still a hard watch, and that's some accomplishment. Difficult to recommend, but if you're the film enthusiast looking for and finding this title, you owe it to yourself to check it out. Thanks for covering this film and giving your honest thoughts. I also enjoyed that Joe Bob episode immensely. Yeah, I don't know if I'd recommend it, but yeah, it's
that was good feedback right there.
Yeah, it is. That's excellent. That's excellent.
Right on the nose.
Appreciate it, Don Joe.
Thank you.
Hope you keep listening. And then from longtime listener Albert Torres on the same episode, he says, "Once again, you guys don't disappoint." Wait.
Give us a note. Listen to the intro of this episode.
Yeah.
Thanks, Albert. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Albert.
Is that it,
That's
sir?
it.
All right. Do we know what the next film is?
We do.
And it is.
It is. I've chosen The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane.
I'm looking forward to seeing that again. That's another film. Too. That's another film that I saw.
It kind of fits in the same category, I think.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's been a while since I saw it, but
I've never seen this one.
Yeah. I mean, another one. You can't argue against the cast in this one either. So
I've only seen this one once, and it was back in the 70s. And I've always wanted to revisit it. Now I have an excuse, so this will be exciting. I'm looking forward to this.
Jodie Foster, right?
Yep.
Oh, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. All right, Chad, Jeff, Bill, thank you for joining me. This was a load of fun. And Jeff, I just want to stop a second and say thank you for choosing this film.
Oh, you're welcome.
I
was pleasantly surprised too.
We often, right, Chad, give us each other shit for choosing some films. But this one,
Mostly Chad.
Yes.
No, I've done a few. But this one, holy cow! Thank you very much, sir.
Well, just so you know, I got my Nashi collections in from Scream Factory. So
Oh. Did you see Chad's face drop?
More Nashi films on.
so maybe hold your comments till later. Huh?
Yeah, you do that.
You do that, sir. All right. I guess we should go ahead and say good night.
Good night, folks.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.